An apocalypse is coming. No one knows what form it will take. The signs are definitive. Our characters believe and take up the search for the 12 Guardian Towers to protect the world. Some towers are destroyed or fallen into the sea, but we find the remaining ones, long abandoned. Each holds an intelligent orb, but the orbs have no memory of any time they are not in a person's possession, and only answer questions without speculating or offering opinions. We search all the available towers. We talk to villagers nearby. We run out of places to search or explore. Our last session, we don't even take out our character sheets. We just pace around the room, going over anywhere we might have failed to explore. We talk to the orbs and try to wring even the slightest clue about what to do next. The DM is fixed on the integrity of the story and not handing anything to us. We declare our characters return home to wait for the end, and the DM just lets us. Wait, that's it? They just let the game die because the players didn't pixel hunt the correct area to roll an investigation check on? That is bullshit. It's ridiculous and anticlimactic. We have to assume some measure of competence on the player character's behalf, because sometimes the player themselves will get stumped and be unable to recall information that their character should definitely know. There's a reason why Call of Cthulhu has idea rolls to jog a character's memory and help the party get on the right track, or why during an investigation, games like Gumshoe just give you the clues and let you push to find additional information. When it comes to giving your players information, the more important it is, the more obvious it should be. There's this really cool DMing trick called telling your players what the fuck is happening so they can make decisions. And also creating scenarios that have multiple fail states as well as multiple ways to complete them. This way, if the party fails in their ultimate task, at least it was their fault and their choices. Otherwise, this is just railroading with extra steps. The illusion of choice, a scenario where there are correct choices, and all the other ones are dumb and bad. My name is Jacob Crow, and welcome to the Crow's Perch, where I, a cartoon bird on the internet, calls himself a game design architect while still refusing to build an exploration system into 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. But that's one of 3 pillars of cringe for another day. For today, I have an RPG horror story for you about both rules and lawyers. Everybody loves lawyers when they're on your side, but when they're not on your side, it's perfectly reasonable to spit spiteful vitriol on how they're evil and probably feed on the souls of small children to sustain their corporeal forms. And while it's perfectly fine, valid, essential even, for a player to actually read the book so they understand the rules of the game, sometimes there are players that intentionally turn and twist these rules to use against the party's enemies. And sometimes, when they feel like they haven't had enough time in the spotlight this session, using these same rule-bending techniques against the party themselves. The archetypal rules lawyer is a problem player that's a bit of a misnomer, for they don't actually care about the rules, but the rulings themselves. Basically, they want to be the DM, but without all that messy responsibility of being a DM. Basically a backseat driver, but when you get pissed and tell them, well, why don't you fucking drive, Jimmy? Suddenly he gets really quiet and says, well, you know it's your car, you do what you want. Well, if it's my car, Jimmy, maybe you should just shut up and let me drive, huh? You ever think about that, Jimmy? And so, without further ado, let's be bad guys, as we add gathering up a murder to the charges, and dive right into this story. I had a player who played in a couple of campaigns. He was known to be a rules lawyer, and was a bit of a pain to start. Though I was relatively new to running games, and he was reliable and local, which is a big plus when you live in a relatively rural area with a small pool of players. When we first got started, he would challenge me on rules mid-game. To keep things going, we defaulted to Rule 0, after some pushback. And every game was followed by 1 or 2 page single-space emails detailing the areas where he disagreed with my decisions. Very rare in a story where I immediately hate the person the OP is referring to. You have grounds to kick him just based on this. If your mans is writing essays on your rulings, yeah, I think it's safe to say it's pretty much over. But whatever, let's keep going. A few times I did not retcon, but made clarified rulings for how things would proceed if it seemed like I made an incorrect call at the table. The vast majority of the time it boiled down to, this is the way we're doing in my games. Sorry if you disagree, and feel free to run a game by your rules. I'll even join as a player. We started a long-running campaign in a crazy homebrewed world during the heyday of D&D 3.5. There were 6 players. I allowed some third-party content, so everyone had slightly overpowered characters. Rarely do a group of players complain if they have too many strong abilities after all, and this was a mostly fun game. It didn't stop the long post-game emails, and they continued to get longer every week. From Mr. Rules Lawyer. Going forward, let's just call him Lawson. Finally topping out at 4+ pages after every game session. We played the campaign from level 1 up to level 12, over more than a year, when they decided to try to rob the well-protected vaults belonging to a lich. It was known this place was heavily trapped, and the one gap the group had struggled with the entire time was not having a rogue. They came up with inventive ways of finding, triggering, and dodging traps. I was fine with this. After the umpteenth trap in this particular session, they had located yet another magical trap. The rest of the party retreated 60 feet around a corner, with the intention of sending in a summoned minion to trigger it. Lawson mocked the rest of the group for their cowardice, and explicitly stated, these traps always have a radius of 30 feet. I'm going to stand 31 feet away from the trap and watch it go off. This particular trap happened to be Circle of Death, which in 3.5 had a radius of 35 feet. I was doing my best to keep the devilish GM grin off my face, particularly since this was the 3rd time they had found one of these, and I knew he was making a potentially fatal mistake with his character. The trap was triggered. The spell went off to the full radius, and Lawson rolled a natural 1 on his saving throw. First, he whines that it isn't fair. Then he suggested I lied about the radius. After looking up the spell, he then accused me of changing the trap type after he declared where he was standing. So, I showed the whole group my notes, and the trap map for everything they had covered. I had written it all up in Word, and printed out the notes, so it wasn't like I could easily change them with my pencil at the table. The group rested, and the druid prepared a reincarnate spell to bring Lawson's character back to life, since he was their cleric. Rolling on the chart for the random reincarnation race, it was going to turn Lawson's character into a human, which really isn't that bad, even if it was going to change up his stats a bit. And they were getting high enough that with some effort and a side quest, they could have gotten his original race back. Instead, however, Lawson said his character would be offended to come back as a human, and would never do so. That the character's soul would rather stay dead. I asked to confirm. The other players told him to stop being dramatic. He insisted on this. I stated, the reincarnation fails, because Lawson's character's soul declines to come back. The body dissolves to ash, and she is permanently dead. Lawson then threw a fit about being permanently dead. I didn't budge. He chose death for his character, over inconvenience, and I wasn't going to let that slide. I was happy to have him roll up a new player character, especially since the Lich had an entire area devoted to unique specimens coming up. It was the perfect place for the party to find his new player character, and get back into the game. That night, I received a 6-page diatribe after the game. Lawson's final ultimatum. was that I should allow his character to come back as a ghost, which can possess the bodies of other characters, both player characters and non-player characters, with no saving throw. While possessing a body, the ghost gets to keep all of his mental stats and character/class abilities, while gaining the body's physical stats and racial abilities. This possession had no time limit or way to end it, other than, when I find a more suitable host, I'll just move on. This was clearly a broken and in no way sane power to grant any player character, or even a non-player character. No saving throw versus indefinite possession? No way, no how. I declined. He insisted he was never coming back, which I confirmed was correct, and then permanently disinvited him from this and all future campaigns with me. I printed the entire exchange to share with the other players, so they would know why I did this, and they were amazed I'd put up with the emails for this long, since they had no idea it was going on at all. After all was said and done, I discovered just how much extra stress those emails had added to my life, and actually felt rejuvenated and more excited to continue with the campaign. It was also a very valuable lesson in drawing boundaries with players, and I now cut off any of this behavior quite early. I don't mind if people disagree with my rulings, and I'm happy to discuss it with players, so we're all in agreement on how to go forward. But someone questioning all of my decisions as a GM is clearly a bad fit, and should not be in my groups. I give this advice to other GMs, and offer up this horror story as reasons you should not be afraid to set solid boundaries even when you're new to running games. To this OP, the amount of restraint and patience you had towards Lawson is honestly astounding. As a game master, it is perfectly fine for rulings to be challenged by your players. After all, we all have our own perceptions of reality, and that all connects us into the shared fantasy of what we're playing. As a consequence of this, what's more important at the table than memorizing the rules is the consistency of your rulings. Alas, we don't all have the memory of an elder brain, or the confidence of a GIF. So sometimes you're going to forget previous rulings, or be uncertain about ones you're going to make in your session, or for the campaign at large. But as daunting as this may seem, the responsibility of this isn't all on you. Having players remember your rulings or helping you make one on the fly should be a welcome addition to your gaming table. But as a player, this assistance must be made in good faith, and with the knowledge that we're doing this as a group to have fun. This is why the rules lawyer is a problem player. They're not doing this for your enjoyment, or for the enjoyment of the rest of the table. They're doing this for them. To win. To feel like they're the sole arbiter of truth in a make-believe world that they owe nothing to, and that they aren't even in charge of. They want the power with none of the responsibility. Who said that quote again? Uncle Dennis Reynolds, that's right.
With real power comes real responsibility, and I don't want any of that shit. I just want the money.
So that's the end of today's stories, and those were my thoughts. And if you have thoughts on today's stories, be sure to leave them in the comments section down below. And if you can't think of a comment, then leave the comment, "See you in court." That way, I know you made it to the end of today's video. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, then feel free to hit that like button, destroy the subscribe button, or directly support me by clicking the join button by the title of this video, or by becoming a patron. And join patrons and members like our Counts of Quills, like Aaron Kados, Sharkay, Kirito Kazuto, Critical Kunik, Evix, King Drazil, Christian Pip, Cosmosis, Rikus, Vincent, Haley Thompson, Zero Fang, and Netscape Navigator. Since I've been saying heretics and Dark Tide, I might as well use this voice for addressing the barons of Beaks, like Brittney Mars, Rimgrim, Rathiana the Nerd, Sara Warren, Specter Spark, ArsTorok, ghostleegon, MrHypocritical, Jayvon Meighan, Jesse Schoedel, KuntosWeasel, MoetisMaou, Techblog, Kurestor, Cardespawn, Jester King, Lord Rende, Danny the Drake, McKeatley, and Onya. But the real bosses are the dukes who feathers, like Craykard, Hexblading, Kai-veMind, TheSchoolBus, MirageVaxus, Quinn, Blues Otters, Jared Zemlin, Doc Salty 96, Matthew MulQueeny, and Acroth. Thank you so much for your love and support, which also directly helped me buy Christmas presents this month. Couldn't have done it without you guys. And with all of that out of the way, I wish you guys happy holidays, and I'll leave you with this week's Art of the Week by Pearl OTSG, who shared a really cool animation of the crow on a previous episode of an RPG horror story I covered about a player who proposed in the middle of a game. Link to their full video will be pinned in the comment section. And I'll see you next time, as the crow flies.